Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. Yes, I will. My name is Margit Wilhelm. I'm from the University of Namibia, and I will be telling you about the steenbras, a little story. But first, let me tell you about Namibia. We're now moving back into the southern hemisphere and into southern Africa. So you know the map of this conference by now. That's the map of South Africa, and Namibia actually fits in there, over there. So now I'm moving the map down. I'm showing you the map of Southern Africa. In case you didn't know, we have Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Angola. So Namibia is on this in the southeast Atlantic. We have that stark west coast where you have a very strong upwelling cell here, cold water, and so most of the coast has wind-driven upwelling, very cold water, but you have some warm water moving in from Angola. The shore angling, when we talk about recreational fishing, we don't have much fresh water to speak of at all. We don't have any estuaries, so our entire coastal fishery looks like this. On the left there, that's in the far south, and I will show you the site just now on the map. And here that's in the far north. The entire coast is pretty much sandy beaches, not many rocks to speak of, and also not easy to launch a boat from. So when we talk about small-scale commercial fishery, we're talking about only shore anglers. And often they have to drive quite far distances. So here is a map of our sampling sites from the genetic and age and growth study. So these are not actually towns. The only town that is here where the people actually live is over here. And so this entire, well, you also have towns south of this up to here, but the fishable and the small-scale fishery area mostly happens north of Henty's Bay. And in the gray you see that's the only accessible area that's actually open to shore angling. In the north is the Skeleton Coast Park, and you only have Terrace Bay and another area here that's open. And in this area you only have, now you have these concession holders that go in and practice mostly catch and release. And the same within the south where, and that's only a campsite that's over here. It's like a hut with a camp, the same at Miop Bay. And from here on, it's very difficult actually to get further because you have dunes along at the coast. The next town here is Lithognathus, which is a harbor, and then you only have Oranjemund in terms of towns. So being an upwelling area, it's an area of low biodiversity and high biomass, so we only really have 5 or 6 bony, believe it or not, bony fish species that are caught. Sometimes you have the more tropical species in summer moving in from Angola, but very rarely they're recorded and caught, and we don't regard them as our fish. And I will focus here on West Coast steenbras. And I will tell you a story about them, as I said. And so Bruce Mann brought together or organized the red list assessment in southern Africa of all the lionfish species. And they went to press in 2025. And here we classified, or West Coast steenbras was classified from near threatened to endangered. And I will tell you why, or I will tell you the data that is available and what we know about them in this presentation. So just to show you again more closely what they look like, going on Judy's presentation, these are already dead, so it's not a good picture of capture and release, but this is what I like to call our comparisons, or degrees of comparison. And also on the left you see Sandy Nipagelwa, who did an amazing study on SNPs and genetics, And then on the right is Alarki Shikongo, who did the tag-and-recapture study that ended in 2022. And then we have an angler there who volunteered his time to help us catch them. They are a spirit fish, and we thought to have two populations in Namibia, a southern stock, and they're caught as far as Muyok Bay in terms of our samples, and then a northern stock. But in the literature, they thought to occur from the Langa River to Cape Town, but pretty much most of the population lives in Namibia, or is caught in Namibia. Sorry about that. So then the first data set is a data set that was collected on roving creel surveys. That means anglers are interviewed face-to-face while they're fishing. They're asked how long they've been fishing and how many fish they caught, and often the fish are measured. And the other roving part is counting the anglers while roving. And these are the areas that the Kirchner and Bayer first described this, and Carola Kirchner came up with this method and how they should be sampled and how often they should be sampled, and designing the whole method of roving creel surveys that had been going on since 1995 to current. Twice per month they're going sampling, and this is the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources in Namibia, the government ministry, but the government changed at the end of last year, and now it's the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Water, and Land Reform, or as we call it, the Ministry of Everything right now. Also, shout out to Carola Kirchner, who started this whole sampling scheme, who navigated the field of recreational fisheries as a woman in the 1990s already, and amazing data sets that only we're trying to recollect some of these data. Also, tag and recapture, they've done so much in those times. All right, so these are the numbers of surveys that, now this data set I'm presenting you starts in 95 and goes up to 2017, because after that there were some gaps and then there was COVID, so only using it up to the, that's how many surveys they've conducted, angling groups and number of anglers they've interviewed, fish that they counted of the 5 species, and not all the time, but sometimes they also measured the fish, so there's also a length distribution. But here now, just focusing on West Coast steenbras, and just for now using the catch, so number of fish per angler hour, and then detrending it for with a 0 inflated GLM for year, area, season, and weekday, so whether it's a weekend or a weekday. And then I also need to mention there was a minimum length limit introduced in 2001, probably effective since 2002, so about here. So in order to make the catch per unit effort comparable, I truncated this by the 40 centimeter total length. So these are only the allowable fish that are caught, and you can see that immense decline in catch per unit effort over time. The data set can also be used to calculate the total catch, though there are problems with calculating effort with this method, the roving creel, but these are the crude estimates of number. Catch has declined over time since the highest to the lowest, and number of anglers appear to have declined as well. Then just briefly, this is Natana's paper on an angler survey that we've done, where we've interviewed 234 anglers. We asked them many questions on management, but I just want to point out here one of the questions where we asked them to rate the changes in catch for the following species over the past 5 years. And West Coast steenbras, 81% of them agreed that they have declined or strongly declined even in the past 5 years. Also pointing out in the open-ended question, many of the anglers pointing out we need to stop fishing them and so on. So there is buy-in, and it is visible already by the anglers. Then also looking at their growth rates in terms of their life history. This is a paper in Fisheries Research from 2025, using the tag and recapture data, the length frequency distribution data, and the otolith-based length and age analysis. Here I'm just showing you an otolith. And just to point out that in the north and in the south we have different sizes. So in the north, the largest fish that we caught and that there are records of are around 80, and there are some records of 90 centimeter fish, but in the south the records of the largest fish are never above 70. So there are different sizes, but we showed that there are no differences in their growth parameters or by stock, so by north and south, or by the method, so we cross-validated the methods, or by sex. In terms of sex, they change from male to female, being aspirate, and here just showing the length at sex change in terms of when they change, when 50% of them have changed from male to hermaphrodite, and when 50% of them have changed from male to female. And they have to grow 5 years old and up to 8 years old in order for them to become female. So very slow growing and very late maturing. And at that stage, at that length and age, they also change, also only becoming mature. And here this is the overall from both males and females combined. So late maturing, which already also makes them very vulnerable. Then putting this all together, I see that my time is running out. Just a crude, putting all these data together, the catch per unit effort you see here, then also the length, the age length, and using the best case scenario natural mortality that was described and used by Holzhausen and Kirchner, assuming that they were at 100% biomass in 1997, which they weren't. They were already fished for a long time after that. They're now at 18% of this 100%. And just to point out that already they were estimated to be at 42% by Holzhausen and Kirchner in 1999. Also, what we stumbled across but became really important is when we looked at the length frequency distributions, that you can only follow certain number of cohorts maybe every 4 years or so, because as them being slow growing, you should have seen many more peaks here. And we found, and this is for the unfished area in southern Namibia, so we found intermittent recruitment, which also makes them more vulnerable and more difficult to recover apart from everything else. So in summary, we have catch rates that are severely declined. This has also been observed by anglers who express their willingness to start conservation or start some measures. They're long-lived, they're slow-growing and late maturing, therefore even more vulnerable, and therefore probably why they so severely declined. They, like I said, late maturing, they undergo sex changes, which also complicates their reproductive ability. Their current spawning stock biomass is at 18% with the crude estimate of 1997, which was already fished then. They have intermittent recruitment even in the unfished area. What I didn't present here, but I also just want to point out, Nipangelwa's MSC, they have low genetic diversity, overall genetic exchange, but local adaptations, but not sufficient movement to replenish from the south, the unfished stock in the north. And also another MSC, we showed some complex growth rate changes, but I will not go into that. So many recommendations are possible even the entire presentation of Judy this morning, how angler behavior can be changed, but I'm just mentioning a few. The bag limit needs to be reduced. Last week they had a meeting at the ministry and with some stakeholder groups proposing 5 fish per day, but I think that's still too high. A slot limit has been shown to be effective, protecting the boffs and also the young fish, but none of these work, as we heard from others and as we heard from the anglers, if the rules aren't enforced, if the compliance isn't there, and none of these work if we're not effectively and alive releasing the fish. Angler education, as we heard this morning, alone is not enough, but that's one of the things that we can work on. I personally dream of a research recreational fisheries working group in Namibia with many involved. We definitely need data from the closed areas because even there we will see catch and release mortality, so we need to know how much they're catching and releasing, and data from their ski boats, which apparently they have started collecting recently. Thank you very much. Sorry for